Now, people that are experiencing cyberbullying, or parents that sense their child might become the victim of cyberbullying, it's your place in Albany, and also you have places in Syracuse or Buffalo that
we do.
You want to mention.
There's other prevention networks within our area. We have the Capital Region, BOCES does great prevention work. We also have in the Syracuse area the Prevention Network, which is another great facility that hosts not only prevention programs but also some trainings also surrounding these different issues. And then out in Erie County, Buffalo, we have the Erie Council on Prevention and Substance Abuse Services, which also is a good avenue for the people in the Buffalo area if there's ever any need or any addressment that they need to attain, to actually contact those two councils, and they'll look into coming into your schools and other venues that you have to talk about these issues.
What is the easiest way for our viewers watching today, either in Buffalo, Syracuse, or Albany, to contact your organizations?
We have a great website, the www.theacca.net, and when you get on our website, you can type in or just click on our prevention link or our training link, and it lists all the different programmings that we have available in the community, and we can reach out to contact people out in Buffalo or Syracuse that way also.
Now, we spoke on the phone the other day, and you were able to document me, and I when you refresh my memory, that there have been 3 deaths that are the result of cyberbullying, and they were suicide. But
suicide, yes.
The thing I found most fascinating is you told me about this adult woman who on the web pretended she was a teenage boy who drove a high school kid to suicide. Would you talk about that a little bit?
That happened a couple of years back, and an adult woman who was the mother of a student, a friend of another girl's, signed on utilizing a 13-year-old boy's account, pretended she was a 13-year-old boy, and she wanted to get this little girl to like this boy. When the little girl found out, well, not little, she was 13, 14 years old, when she found out about this, it was devastating to her because she thought for once somebody actually liked her and was really communicating positively with her, and it turned out that the 13-year-old girl did take her life because of that, and the mom was charged with some charges back then. What
was the ultimate cyberbullying message sent by this parent that drove the high school kid to suicide?
I think it really devastated that person's self-esteem, where she was feeling that somebody was actually liking her, and then you get that fake identity, and then it really makes the person who was bullied feel very inadequate, very scared almost, because here there's a parent who's actually taking on this type of role, which is a very negative role model.
What would motivate an adult woman to do something like that? She doesn't have enough going on in her life?
It's really hard to tailor, but I'm addressing it as a way that maybe she's trying to get this friend of her daughter's to not like that boy. It's really hard to really feel and sense what she was thinking at that time, but for any adult to portray a student just shows that they don't feel very safe about themselves.
And what ultimately, I know the web is, the technology is relatively new, and law enforcement is still adjusting to how to punish people for acts on the web. I know if you make a threat on the president, you're 2 minutes later the FBI's at your door, or the Secret Service. But for something like this horrendous crime, and I feel it was a crime.
It is, absolutely. And well, within our county, Albany County, they do have a cyberbullying law that the legislation has passed. So there is some penalties associated with a person or even an adult who knows that this is happening. So within our county, there is a legislation law that's been passed. And then throughout our state, we have the All Schools Dignity Act, which will help schools address the situation of bullying too, and where their responsibility lies. So at least we're making some progress. It's slow steps, but at least we're getting that message across that if this is happening and you know it's happening, there are some legal consequences and monetary consequences that'll affect you.
Now, you were saying that you offer the bullying prevention programs. What would they consist of, and how can people get involved in these programs that you offer?
We go into schools, districts, we go into classrooms, and we share information. We bring in packets of information for kids to see and address, and also to help them understand how to be safe. If a person's being bullied, we not only want to address that victim, but we also want to address the bully too, so they can see those signs and symptoms and the behaviors that are associated with that, and then the negative consequences also that are affected. When we do our cyberbullying presentations, we really want to educate the kids on how to stay safe. If they're going to utilize the internet, they're going to utilize any of that other technology, how to keep your passwords protected, how to not go into different sites that can lure you into some negative behavior, and really how to talk to adults, because adults are there to help them understand these different avenues of communication.
I think I have, you spoke recently at a meeting I attended, and I think I have your cyber bullying guide for students, which would be part of your program.
Yes.
The one thing you seem to stress is that when you someone starts to harass you or bully you on the web, you don't respond.
Absolutely, Joe. And that's one of the most important things that we try to address is if a person is angry, they're seeing something, they're hurt, they want to respond back in a negative way. The actuality of that is it's just going to cause that bullying person, that person who's bullied, this other individual, to act out even more in an aggressive manner. So if we can teach kids to just take a step back, turn that computer off, and go talk to an adult, whether it be a teacher, a parent, another adult, an older sister or brother, and really talk about what that message was, and don't respond back in a negative way. And if you start to do that, then that person is not going to be so intimidating, and they're going to stop contacting and spreading rumors.
Well, also too, I think, although you don't think of it at the time when someone hurts you, by not responding when you're not bringing yourself down to their level, but two, I think it becomes very frustrating for the person bullying that they didn't get a reaction to their...
And it makes them want to continue to do that. And even with our regular forms of bullying, we teach the kids to walk away. You know, if somebody's being unkind to you, just turn around and walk away, ignore them, and really talk to an adult. Same thing with cyberbullying. That person is going to want to show that aggression by lashing out in a negative way. But if that person who is being the victim, the target, doesn't react, you're going to see a step back. You're going to see that person go on to somebody else. And eventually, they're hopefully going to stop with this behavior.
Now, bullying, I have a feeling that kids don't just grow up one day and decide to be bullies. I just wonder if there's something going on in the house which encourages one to be a bully.
There absolutely, depending on that situation, there could be, you know, there might be a situation where that child doesn't get enough attention at home, and this is their way that they lash out, is to feel superior against another individual. But, you know, sometimes you say, oh, if somebody hits you, hit them back. And that's a learned behavior too that kids are hearing and seeing. But in actuality, that's not going to be the safe avenue to take. So we need to teach our kids, I think, that back to that respect and how to communicate in a respectful manner, so, you know, everybody does show that they care. You know, back to that treat everybody the way that you want to be treated, that golden rule.
You know, you talk about learned behaviors, and I've heard in spousal abuse or child abuse that kids grow up in situations like that, but then when they become adults, you would think that the kid would say, well, I didn't enjoy that as a child, so I won't do that to my child. But instead they turn around and it seems to pass from generation to generation.
It's a hard avenue to crack. And I think with reaching out and having some counseling and really working with social workers and psychologists, we can really change that behavior, that family dynamic.
I know of someone who was a librarian in a high school, and I know of someone who was a school nurse, and they just decided to retire when they were eligible, not because they hated their jobs, but the way the kids had changed, where there was no respect for adults, for the teachers, for the faculty. Do you think we've changed in that area?
I think we have, Joe. I think really with the way that we've used our technology, I think it's isolating kids to actually get outside and go play, you know, play outside till it's dark, play kickball, play all that stuff. Right now we see a lot of our kids, I would hate to use the word addicted, but they utilize video games. So they're learning, they're addressing a lot of those learned behaviors from those video games. And also, I think just that whole component of what literacy is, being able to take a story, work with a group of students, and use their imagination. I think we've lost that, and I think we've also lost the way that we communicate with each other because of technology. Whether it be we're always on there using our email addresses rather than picking up the phone. There's just a lot of different societal changes, I think, and a lot of that is in relation to how a person reacts to an individual.
I was talking with someone recently who works with police, and they were talking about one of a police academy where they insisted that all of the candidates who were about to become police officers turn off their cell phones. And they seemed kind of thrown by that, and they were forcing them to interact socially and start developing social skills, because it seems the amount of time you spend on the web in front of that screen, instead of being with people in your local library, you're not getting those social skills. Do you agree with that?
I do. I have to say I do agree with that, because you have lost that way to communicate effectively, to really speak about your feelings, to speak about what's happening. You know, instead we're writing it down in a message or we're posting something. So I think bringing back that way to communicate with our face-to-face, you know, eye contact and everything like that, and using our speech, absolutely. It's definitely a way that I think we become better people.
Now, how did the Addictions Care Center of Albany and other groups that you work with around New York State, when you think of an addiction, you think of drugs or alcohol, you also indicate that cyberbullying is an addiction? It
is, and it's a repeative behavior. With our Addictions Care Center of Albany, we do a lot of preventative programs in the community, in the Capital District, and throughout the state. We focus on substance abuse prevention. We focus on talking about underage drinking issues. And with that comes cyberbullying, because as a person is being bullied, we're noticing signs and symptoms of whether they use alcohol or marijuana or other drugs, that addiction component plays into being bullied. And also with our prevention programs, it's a good way to actually reach out to the community, reach out to students, parents, and other community members to let them know there's several different ways and avenues to take if you are being harassed or bullied, that you don't need to use a substance to feel better.
I heard someone speak, and I was about to get involved with Facebook from New York State Consumer Fraud, and they were so anti-Facebook.
Yeah.
And they said that's what email is for. You don't need Facebook. Facebook has turned out to be very dangerous, hasn't it?
I would agree with that, Joe, because Facebook, it's a great social networking site if it's used in a responsible manner. When somebody starts to post something about a person, there's 100 to 300 to 400 people that are going to see that message. So that's really going to harm that victim in such a devastating way, where that's where we see a lot of our suicidal tendencies coming about, is because of whether it be Facebook, MySpace, any type of social networking site. Those postings not only can go to that individual, but it goes to that whole list of friends on Facebook.
Also, too, what's happened over the years, people have done things inappropriately that for some reason, I don't know, they've been drinking at the time or something, feel like they want to share their inappropriate behavior with the world. And now there are companies, before they hire an employee, that hire a company that goes out and just researches one's Facebook history, and all of these unique things that you've done in your life pop up and harm you for life.
Absolutely. And even when we work with our high school and our college population, that's the first and foremost thing that we let them know. If you have an account, make sure you're not posting anything that's going to be detrimental to you as you go into your future careers. Even colleges now are looking, as students are applying for their colleges, they look to see if a student has a Facebook or a MySpace account, and if there's something negative, something vulgar even, then they look into that individual a little bit more.